separate meter or?
Yeah,
Well, there's only one.
Okay, no, the guys who work there don't do anything like this.
Not recently, no.
everyone up north, the fields up there, that
They-
the size of
Occasional
every
drill.
single
On
field
these,
there's got a foot of snow. I'm like, these
Panels,
are
I
really,
think next year is the last year.
Yeah. that's
Pay
it.
on those, which is good, because then
we went by
we'll start
one.
seeing.
It's all right, the old
roads,
RES, they get solar
$47,000
panels,
a year
guarantee it.
of
We
benefit.
went by one that snowblower,
Well,
big
yeah,
tractor
because
between each one, and the guys out there. turning the
22
radio.
more panels up.
Snow
And that
blowing
should
them
cover-
panels.
I've got
You know, that
36.
might actually give them a van clean up.
And the flames.
No, you're okay,
except
you're
for
okay.
22, which are new. Mine are
More efficient.
more efficient, will generate enough
Yeah.
power on my electric bill. But yeah, I about had a heart attack when I saw that.
Came to show support for Randy, he's asking for that helicopter, I want to make sure.
But it's just a Bell Jet Ranger, not
As long as it's only Rockport's helicopter.
Don't enter Camden airspace. Guys ready? I do
We
this?
have like a drone policy for height, they can't be within.
400.
You know, or- Might have somebody got a rat out.
Well, unless they take over the drones, they shouldn't be able to go above 400 in there.
Well, I just looked at a drone the other day and it was
Yeah.
14,000 feet.
Tinker.
I guess, John, yes, that would be.
Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. This is the first meeting of the 3 meetings to go over all the department budgets. Tonight is heavily based on the public safety side of things. So we'll start off with Randy at 6, and then Randy at 6:30, and 6:45, we get the Randy and Jason show to talk about the public safety building. Jason comes on at 7 o'clock, just like 207. 7:30 is EMA. 8 o'clock rec. The other public safety, I'll handle that, sanitation, and then town office building. And if we can go quicker, we'll do our best, okay? Try to get everyone out of here.
So let me start out by giving you some negatives.
Okay.
I don't like the commingling of wages.
Okay,
One line fits everybody.
okay,
I'll
When
second that.
When you look for overtime issues,
Yeah.
there's no, and we've talked about that.
Mhm.
And you
Right.
can't, I have no idea what Randy's budgeted for overtime. I brought my sheet from last year, which gave me everything for the preceding years. But the commingling of the wages for everybody in every office doesn't help unless you go back to the separate sheet, which gives you the wage study and it explains out a lot of, but.
Yep.
Even that doesn't give you an accurate picture because not everybody got what the wage study said and or the 8.7%. There was a lot of,
there was some, yeah,
it wasn't straight across the
Not straight
board, one
across the
thing
board.
or another. So
right.
that's my biggest.
I
gripe.
did not expect this group to be highly in favor of the change. I think largely we're moving, you look at the front page of these department budgets, we're trying to get to a point where we're capturing what these departments are providing in terms of services and trying to measure the performance measures of, measure the performance of each of these departments. So we're really looking at outputs of a whole department and the cost to provide the labor that feeds those services
So I guess
is
we're-
sort of one way to get there.
And on that note, all the
Yeah.
fancy stuff in front, which is explaining everything, is good job. But everything we're talking about might take up the space of 1 page for the entire town. So, one more page out of 200 or 600, whatever, a lot anyway. One
Yeah.
more page isn't gonna break us for,
No, it's certainly not trying to save ink or
I can tell.
a forest. I think the real purpose is that we can get very much into the details of what an individual position makes or doesn't make. And that's not really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to look at outcomes versus what we're putting into the departments. And that's where it's easy to get sort of lost into that world. So, but certainly if there's information and questions, whether it's within a line or within multiple lines, that's what we're here to do. So,
I mean, I'm not the chair of the committee, Clay, but I don't know if anybody else has any things that they've noticed in reading it that might be interesting to get in feedback.
Yeah, I think it also more stands out in like the fire department where we have the 2 new positions, just to be able to see that breakdown, because it's obviously captured in there.
Mhm.
It does make it tough to go to dick around a little bit, but at the same time, it's, I don't think it's a terrible idea, because it, the right way to say it, it's all kind of lumped in, and I don't know, if, like you said, we necessarily need to be breaking all of that down position by position in this instance.
we can certainly, I mean, as we get into individual positions, I mean, I don't, to print out a new budget obviously is not really where we want to go, but I think we can take, if there's individual departments and, for example, Mark and I talked quite a bit about the overtime and how much you set aside in overtime. And the police department is one such instance where our overtime is a driver in that department. Most departments don't have a lot of overtime, but that's, in part by how we've done that over the past several years. So maybe we can get into each one and then maybe pull out from there if there's questions about individual spots. If that'll work for everyone here.
You're talking about taking each section like personal service, employee benefits, purchased and contractual, and just asking bracket for bracket if we have.
No,
or do you want to go line by line.
I was thinking department by department. Let's get into the police and sort of talk about where that stands, because like I said, in that case, it's largely contractual. There's a lot of the wages in it that are included there that are a contractual issue.
Yeah.
So we could. Yeah, Jeff?
I just wanted to pick up the other side of the equation where I think that the commingling or the lumping together of the information is a reasonable way to look at a department and say, these are the department's responsibilities, this is what it costs, what do we think about that? And rather than, there's an emotional as well as overtime could be looked at as part of the strategy. You pay people overtime because it doesn't make sense to bring in a whole nother person, things like that. So I think the information is useful, but I also think that looking at things in a lump sum and against the responsibilities and the job they're doing is a reasonable way.
Oh, and yeah, and I think that's the hope. The hope is, I think we talked last year, and I thought the library discussion was a really good one that this group had when we went through the library and talking about outcomes related to what we're paying. And, I'm not to pick sides or say which was right and which was wrong, but the point was, there was some good conversation about, how many people are coming in the door, and how many people do we have working there, and is that the right number, and the numbers are going this way versus that way. And that's a conversation, I think, as a matter that really makes a lot of sense for this group, and the board and the budget committee to talk about value to the citizens, right? I think that's really a good place we can be. It's a hard place for a group to be, to say, well, it's 57,000 for this one person, and it could be 52, and that's not really, this group isn't equipped to do that. And so we can talk about final numbers, we can talk about outcomes, but it's very difficult. You don't usually have people who've previously, been in municipal government or a librarian or a teacher or principal overseeing a school budget. I mean, there's just those experiences are fewer and harder to come by. So trying to get to performance measures driving costs, hopefully that gets us to a point where we can sort of talk about value to all of us as taxpayers. That's the hope.
I did ask a couple of weeks ago for Jonathan to get some information with regards to people that might be in some stage of foreclosure. And it's not as bad as what I might have thought. And most of those are timeshare. There might be one or two residents. So
Yeah,
that's a good picture in one sense because people are keeping up with their taxes.
and then the other, so what Mark asked for that, I wanted to get just a few years. So we're gonna get 7 years of data. So I'll have it for you Wednesday night, where you can see how many 30-day notices we sending out, which is the notice we send before we put a lien on somebody's house or property. How many we're actually liening, how many actually go to lien. Because a number of people will get that notice and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea, or the bill went to my sister, or da, 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 da. The concerning number is the foreclosure number, right? That's the number, they get all the way through that process, and then we own it. That's the place none of us want to be. On either side. It's not good on this side. It's certainly not good if you're having your property taken. So I'm gonna have 7 years worth of data for you guys. Not every single one, but the summaries of those, because it does give you a picture of sort of the ebb and flow.
We're in a better shape than we were 5 years ago.
Right.
I believe, if my memory serves.
Yeah, that's my hope. I think
By
it is.
virtue of foreclosure?
Yeah.
As a.
You know, there are like two, I think we're down to 2
Yeah,
now. And I think 6 years ago, there might have been a total of 40. That's including the Samoset ones. But if you look at this year, the Samoset and the residential, I think it's like 9.
right,
So
right.
7 for the Samo and 2 for us. So you go from 9 to, back when I first ran for the board and I asked Linda, I think it was 43 in total.
And those timeshares are a wonky little deal because you pay a tax bill of like $14
Yeah.
for your timeshare of the week. And if you don't make that payment, and it goes through the same process for all of us as homeowners, we pay for our taxes. That $14 could go to foreclosure. Who cares? Like, that's, maybe people want to hold on to the timeshares, but it's sort of not the same, certainly as all of us, somebody's home or their property. So, I got that for you on Wednesday, and I'll have a handout for you. If I can get it via electronic, so you can look at it ahead of time, I'll do that as well. But Liz was back today from vacation, and so she and Shay were working on that this afternoon. Hope to have it tonight, but didn't have it, so. Okay. All right, you guys ready for police? Randy, you ready?
I was ready
Get your
15
Clark,
I was ready 15 minutes
your
ago.
Clark Kent glasses, because you were 30 minutes early, or I don't know.
Yeah, I come early.
You and Clay figure that one out. All right. So I just provide the brief overview, and then I'll let Chief go on from there. But obviously, the big sort of overarching in this department is the union contract. We were obviously that was highly informed by the salary survey. We had probably one of the best union sort of negotiations in terms of openness and fairness that I've ever seen. Chief, myself, and actually asked Mark to join us as part of that conversation. He obviously has particular experience in this circumstance for us. We had a really good conversation. And largely that was driven by the fact we've done our homework. And the fact we have our homework done on that made it a little bit easier because we sort of knew what the market was. And that's been hugely beneficial for us. We can go into that a little bit more. Legal fee increases, full requests. We've seen a number of these that are coming across. In fact, we had a couple over the weekend. And obviously these take a particularly delicate circumstances to find out what is billable and what is not. And Chief talked about what that means, but, and then.
If I could, John.
Yeah, go for it.
One of the things we're seeing is skirting of the discovery process. When somebody gets charged with something, there's a process that goes through where they get police reports through the district attorney's office. And attorneys are now sending us requests for all of that stuff instead of waiting for discovery. We have to look at all these FOIA requests, and like John said, a lot of them get pretty complex as to what they can.
How many are you getting? Is it this year as opposed to past years.
It's increasing all the time. I probably get 1 or 2 a week now.
Well, and my question would be along that, when we go to, each thing that you're picking out for the FOIA, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, last year when we look at it, it was 3,600 budgeted, but I don't know what has been spent year to date.
Yeah,
And there was 6,000 budgeted, so not knowing what was spent year to date, I'm kind of,
as we were going through that, we noticed that they've been coded wrong. So some of them have been coded in the wrong department. But
do we have a number for that thing?
I don't have it here. Yeah, but we've had, I would say, we've had 2 very extensive FOIA requests that we've been working through on a couple cases.
And a lot of times they don't bill us until it's over.
I mean, it's pretty hard to say I can give you
It
6
is.
when I don't know what you spent
I know.
this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on, I mean, the other questions on that, the next few, and you can just go ahead and open them all. So what you'll see in a number of different places, we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say. Department heads, I made it, as we were talking, going through this process with union contracts, talking about our salary survey, talking about our union contract for public works. The priority of the budget was clearly wages, benefits, and keep the people we have. That was the priority. And that meant that other things had to get cut. And some of them are great ideas. Some of them are ideas that we really shouldn't wait for. But we had to get this budget into a place where everyone could sit here in this room and talk about it rationally. And that meant making some tough choices. And so, even before we sort of went through this union contract, and Chief and I had talked, and in fact, a number of us had that conversation about, we need to find a way to balance out these needs. And that means a couple of things on here that probably we should do. I couldn't, well, Chief didn't put it in his budget as the department head budget, that first column. But that was, we're working together because we knew we had to do without some things to fix the biggest issue on the table. And I don't know if you want to maybe add to that.
Well, some of the other things that, radars are supposed to be replaced in capital improvement plan this year. We'll forego that. That's about $9,600. Throw that on top of the cruiser. When the union started talking about what they were looking at for wages, I said, look, you have to give up some things that we could probably get this year. And a cruiser was one of them. And to get the wages up to be competitive, we understand that our officers are very loyal. They're being recruited every week, most of them every day, to go to the departments that are paying them. So we wanted to get the wages up. There's about $50,000 for a new cruiser to try to offset the increase. Putting the radars off is something that we can, those radars are starting to become obsolete and hard to get parts for them to fix them. So another big project that I would like to get us involved in is Camden, Rockport, and Rockland. Working with the Volunteers of America to put a community response person in to help us with mental health, general assistance and things like that. Price for that is about $100,000. Camden, I put $50,000 in Camden's budget this year to help pay for that. I knew, talking with John, that was not going to be something, although we support the idea, having Rockport involved with that. It just wasn't going to be feasible this year to put that into the budget for the big pay increases. Now, Volunteers of America is currently working with us. They're giving us some volunteer time under a grant that both sheriffs from Knox and Waldo County graciously said, hey, we've got this grant. Go ahead and give Camden and Rockport. So we're getting a day a week from them right now under those current grants, and they are incorporating us into their next grant proposal. So hopefully They're very successful with grants. They've had some that are up to $1 million. So we're hoping that we can get a community response person through a grant, but at some point we may have to pay for the services.
Does 1 day per week mean that that person is on site to respond to emergencies, or that that person's on site to help train the rest of your force?
No, they came for their initial visit in Camden, and Stephen Brimley, who is the diversion deflection coordinator, made it through the door, and I put him on a very complicated issue with a 73-year-old who's had some mental health, former veteran, and we found out later that there was some health problems that had been evicted from the residents in Camden. And getting support services has been horrendous, but they worked their way through. We all worked together, drafted even the tall one to help out with throwing some names in there. But this is somebody that the rental company had a legitimate writ of possession for their apartment to have them evicted. And I won't go too far with it.
The net got there just in time.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that we need to look at. By deferring some of these things, next year I wanted to look at body camera and cruiser cameras to get a system that they integrate. I got an estimate of $68,000 over a 5-year period, $68,897, which is $13,779 per year for 5 years. That is an integrated system. Yes, we're trying to do everything we can to put some of this stuff off, but at some point we're going to end up having some big numbers that will come in the future. I'm okay with if we've got to put it off. I mean, we do have cameras in the cruisers right now that give us a mic pack. The officers can record audio with, and we've got through that.
Don't you have body cameras as well? I thought you purchased some.
We've never had body cameras.
That,
They brought up and it didn't make it through.
It's an incredible amount of money. Cloud storage. If you're going to do this project, it has to be done and done right. Rockland has done it. It was quite costly for them, but it's individual officer per camera. Cloud storage is incredible. It's a great expense, but look at the footage you get every night on the news from these things. They're an incredible asset to law enforcement, good and bad.
so one of the things that, and Jonathan and I have talked about it, and Randy and I have talked, and, wages for the officers alone is $60,000 increase. So that's why I said try to find something to help offset that, because that's a significant jump in 1 year, but it's worth it if you don't lose people.
Absolutely.
So back onto I'm sticking on the overtime issue for a minute before we get too far along. So 18 and 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, you were shorthanded. Somebody was at the academy. 37, 48, 44,000 spent in those 3 years. 21, 22, you budgeted 43.5 and spent 35 in round numbers. And you were only short just a little bit, I think, because Yetta was just back. So you budgeted 48,000 for this year, but I have no idea what you have spent year to date.
Ta-da!
Ask and you shall receive. So we're just shy of $4,500 left to budget for this year. We've had some illnesses, sort of create some issues.
We've had I had 3 out at one point with COVID. I think that was the second time. You send somebody to school for a week.
See, these are some of the things that if we don't see them here, how do I know that I might want to give you more or not give you as much?
Could I ask everybody over there to speak a little louder? I
Okay.
can't hear.
I can holler if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Rockport is fortunate. We have a good staff and we want to keep giving them good training. Every time an officer goes to training, Another officer's gotta come in and cover that. So if they're gone for a week, that's a week of overtime, plus the officer is using their duty time, plus if it falls on their days off, then they're getting some overtime as well. Yes, overtime is expensive, but we need to do things to keep, I mean, we've got officers in Rockport that I think everybody has at least one, if not two specialties that they're instructor level trained at. I take our officers who have got some time in, say 3 years, I start training them as supervisors. There's no sense to wait until you need a supervisor to start training people to be supervisors. The other thing it does is when you put patrol officers into supervisory type training, it starts making them think like supervisors. They act and respond like supervisors. So you're getting that higher level of response with that training. Reduces liability immensely because they're thinking and acting and operating like at a supervisory level. We also don't have to immediately put somebody, I never could understand why we promoted supervisors and then trained them. It's just backwards to me. So that is what we try to do every year is, I think one or two of them have already started the FBI leader program. And that's a trilogy of training. It's 3 separate. It's command, leadership, and another one. And I'd like to have them trilogy training. Those trainings are expensive. They're probably $1,500 a year. But like I said, there's no sense to send somebody to subpar training that is so outdated. It is best to find the best training, spend the money, reduce the liability to the town.
Doesn't that make them more interesting to other departments?
Quite honestly, Helen, if you've got a full-time certification and you've got a pulse, you're very marketable to anybody.
Okay.
But I've got to say, I mean, these officers here, because we gave a few of them a chance, in places where they had worked in the first time, wasn't the ideal place for them. They needed a little more time to train. Rockport is a great place to train, but they're loyal as the day is long because we gave them that opportunity. And that has been a great retention tool. Loyalty only is going to go so far though, because the amount of money that's being thrown at these officers is incredible. Sign-on bonuses. I mean, go to the sheriff's department, they're going to give you a car day one.
Well, how much did Brooke increase hers? I mean, you got a 20-year person in Camden.
I lost 2 20-year employees in Camden this year. One for $6 an hour more than what she was making in Camden to start in Thomaston. And Kurt Andrick, who's been with me for 26 years, he took the chief deputy's position for the Knox County Sheriff's. Great promotion for him, well worth it. I mean, Kurt did his time with Camden, and you know, we wished him well. But that was quite a pay increase for him as well.
Then I talked to Brooke and she says, you know, we're in the first year of our contract. There's no way in hell I'm going to be able to get the money that they're offering me before the 3rd year of the contract. I'm not going to work that many more years.
Right, Brooke was in her last 3 years of basically working, so she wanted to get back with that. I mean, you get 20 years out of an employee now, hey, thank you for everything you did, but if they choose to go on. Our younger officers, like I said, they get recruited all the time. We poach for, hey, if Tim Carroll got somebody down there I want, I'm going to offer them the world to come up here. And it's the nature of the beast.
Unfortunately.
So yeah, in Rockport being, in fact, in overtime, in Rockport being a small department, now in Camden, my budget is $55,000 for overtime. But I've got more bodies that I can shift around in Camden, although I'm down 3 right now, so that I've got everybody over there working basically 12-hour shifts. Not having it. Now we can bring resources in from Camden if Rockport officers are burned out with the overtime, but it's still costing money to
Do we, you know, I know in the past when we've been shorthanded, we have paid overtime to Camden
same thing.
to help you out to not do the 12 hours. Is that same offer made for us to work
Absolutely.
over there?
What we do is we offer the overtime to the department who has the vacancy for that shift first. If we go through everybody and nobody wants it, then I can bring somebody from Camden to their shift, vice versa.
I'm just trying to get some of that money back.
Yeah. Actually, Yetta's been working in Camden quite a bit, because we have that. And you can burn a small department out so quick
Yeah.
by giving them 2 months. So it does give us a little break for each other to help each other out. I mean, I'd love to be able to sit here and say, yeah, we could dump 10,000 in overtime, but Megan and I and John sat down and we looked at the numbers as to what we think is a safe number and what we will expect that we're going to spend. And with the amount that the wages have gone up, that increases the amount of overtime hours that we can cover. Is that number okay?
No.
So, but overtime is also one of those things that if you cut it $5,000, and we need to spend it, it's kind of like gasoline. It's one of those things that we're gonna have to overspend. I'd rather present you with a figure that I think is a very safe figure. It's not extending us way out, but it's right in the ballpark of what I think. Now, if I don't have to spend it, it's like anything in my other lines in the budget. If I don't have to spend it, I'm not gonna spend it. I think I've proven over the years I'm very frugal. I can go without if we need to. There's some years that costs just go up. COVID has kicked us in the butt a few times with sicknesses and things like that.
Is the majority of this overtime that we talk about just on shift overtime, or how relative to like how much of this training?
You know, we have a built-in 4 hours every week because with the amount of people we have, there's just that one slot. So
A surplus or 4 hours?
it's 4 hours that we need to fill every week
Has to be overtime.
because of the way the schedule is. We've got officers, I think the minimum they get is 2 weeks, and I've got officers, I think they've got probably as many as 5 weeks of vacation. And they're out. There's court time, breakdown is sick time is another one.
I guess what I was going after, training, I mean, training is, I guess, an optional overtime expense. Everything else is gonna be a mandatory expense anyway, so it's, you don't have the option of if we're gonna spend it or not, it's just whether or not we budget for it.
Right, and I just, like I said, we have a good thing here with our officers, with the amount of training we get. I would hate to cut that back at all. The training group. And the rest of mine, you can see a lot of mine are pretty much zeroed out because I didn't want to increase any of those lines if I didn't have to. And what John made a few adjustments in there, and I'm good with the adjustments he's made. He knows that I'm going to spend it if I have to, but I'll come see him first. And I'll say, I told you we needed that.
That's
You're the
right.
one who took it out.
That $5,000 kind of gasoline, I know.
You know,
He's
that's,
gonna bring me a gas can and be like, here you go,
Yeah.
John.
John, can you bring a gas can out to line this street?
Right.
Buy it now while it's down.
Well, we can fill the gas cans up now. Get some stable in it.
I do have some good stuff I can throw out there. We actually did fairly well with grants this year. We received a 29,000 plus grant from Mid-Coast Council
Oh,
on Government.
gotcha.
That $29,000 grant paid for all brand new mobile data terminals for our cruisers and also the server upgrade in the department as well. That's something we would have had to have budgeted for. We also got an $1,800 from Highway Safety to go to e-citation, which is the ability to issue summonses right from the mobile data terminal. You no longer have to write out handwritten summonses. I try to keep an eye on what I think is going to be an unfunded state mandate quite a bit. E-ticketing got introduced as, hey, this is a great thing. You all ought to get interested in it. And people started buying printers. And then the Bureau of Highway Safety said, we got these grants, we'll buy the printers for you. And I said, yeah, because I know what's going to happen next. We're going to stop printing regular summonses and it's going to fall into our lap. So we did jump on that for an $1,800 grant to get our cruisers all up and ready to do e-citation. And then we put bowler wrap technology into the field this year. Bowler wrap is a device, handheld. It's less than handcuffing on the use of force scale. What it does is it fires a Kevlar lanyard. It is the best thing since Spider-Man, I'm telling you. You fire at a person's leg, it's used for, say somebody is in mental health crisis, they're trying to get away, you're trying to put them in custody as easy as you can. You fire it at the lower extremities and it'll wrap the legs up probably 5 or 6 times around. So it gives us that second to be able to get in touch with it.
Yeah, that's actually 5,000-year-old technology from Africa.
Yeah.
My grandfather brought back to us once a Lola.
Right, and it's incredible, I mean, hospital setting, unbelievable. Doesn't shoot any chemicals. It does make a loud noise when it goes off, so you make sure you holler, bola, bola, bola. And somebody's probably thinking, what the hell are you talking about?
Find out soon enough.
You can wrap the torso with it, you can, on a double, you can wrap the torso, so that somebody who is combative, will wrap them up. You can't break it, it's Kevlar. It's just a tool that's, it's another tool for our officers to be able to take people into custody safely, use in mental health situations, de-escalate, things like that. We were able to purchase those. Diane put in for an MMA grant, which we were a municipal association, which we received $3,000. And we also had some drug asset forfeiture money for our part of a drug arrest here in Rockport. And I think that was right around $2,900. That almost paid for all of that. So we did pretty good that way. So those are all things that we were able to do by seeking grant funding.
Anything else on the police side?
Got 7 minutes to do your ACO on.
ACO is pretty easy.
Not much to bark about here.
Well, I gotta tell you, that's the only one that has a stipend that doesn't have it this year. We have other full-time people that have other stipended positions. And,
They take it over.
well, I mean, it's
Mike, I
no
stayed away
different.
from the stipend on that because I pay overtime out for it, for call out. But we're getting a pretty good deal because our officers will pick up Fido, the friendly dog, and take it to the animal rescue league or pause if needed while they're on patrol. Anything that involves a bite, a follow-up, Tony Delvecchio is our animal control officer. And he does that, does it mostly on duty, doing follow-ups and things. But if he's called out, I pay him the minimum mandatory overtime to come out for those. And it's very rarely that he gets a call. A couple times so far this year, in the last year, that he's come out for that. So I'm able to keep that price down with a stipend. And he's been good with that that deal that we've had.
Now, does the animal control person take care of only domestic animals or what, raccoons, foxes, that sort of thing?
We stay away from the wildlife and we let the warden service do that.
Okay.
The rabies and things like that are tricky business.
I think the only thing we're required is dogs, right?
Right.
Right.
Because it's not a lot against the law for cats to roam.
Even though they're unlicensed.
Yeah, let me tell you some scary stuff about dogs, stray dogs. Town of Camden, one dog, $15,000.
What did he do?
Dog was emaciated, and we were told that it was a stray picked up in Camden, taken to the vet, which took it, taken to the rescue league, which took it to the emergency vet, which it was emaciated, had to go in a rescue dog ambulance to Portland, where they put fluids to it for days and days and days. We eventually did prove who the owner was, and we did charge them with animal cruelty, and we are trying to get restitution for that. But we are required to give aid to those animals, and it can get expensive. And it wasn't a month later, we had another one, similar circumstances. My animal control budget in Camden was way over last year.
animal control. Next. Public safety building. All right, tag team.
I concur with Chief Beasley.
So what we've done here, we've moved building repair and maintenance and mowing to buildings and grounds. This is the first department where you'll see that, but obviously as you look through the budget, you'll see many of the departments, we've done that. So the challenge that we saw in this first year with the buildings and grounds department is it was great that there was monies available, but effectively we put our supervisor of buildings and grounds in a place where they had to beg, borrow, and steal with department heads for funds to complete projects. And so rather than similarly burdening our department heads with the funds and then then passing that off to this person, we said, well, let's just move those budgets. And you all know mowing is handled by that department anyway. I will say the department heads have been really great in working on that sort of transition year that we're in the midst of. Jason's been great, very supportive, providing space for buildings and grounds to work and store tools if needed. But having that budget, obviously, it's just an added layer that really made things a little bit more complicated than I think we were hoping for.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
4137, please remind me what the moment service is?
Climate, it's the system that hooks onto the exhaust of the trucks, so when the trucks start, the exhaust will go in.
Thank you. Couldn't forgotten that.
And the other thing I'd note, and this is again the first building budget we looked at, we increased heating fuel. Remember last year, for those who were on the budget committee and select board last year, we at the sort of 11th hour bumped up a lot of our fuel costs, seeing obviously what was going on in Ukraine and where that was bringing crude oil prices and the market and all. We made some adjustments in a hopeful last gasp to try to make sure we didn't put ourselves in a bad position as we went through the budget through this year that we're in right now. I think we've made it through that. Not to say the war is over, oil rates have stabilized or anything of those things, but at least we have a clearer picture of sort of where that has gone. So we were able to sort of right size that. Now we're at 9,100. So it's a reduction from last year, but obviously it's over our historic numbers, but that's largely driven by the fact that our fuel prices are higher. So that's pretty much the big tickets of public safety. Did I miss anything, chiefs? Okay. We've got the fire department. All right, so this is obviously there's a lot going on here. Some of it is about current needs, some of it's about the needs that are on the doorstep or not, but it's certainly within eye shot of where we are. Budget includes 2 new firefighters, full-time firefighters, EMTs. I'll go through them all and then we can kind of come back to. That's really, that was probably the last item that I put back in. I didn't adjust. And that's not because I don't think that it doesn't show the importance that I think of those positions, because I think we need to be ready for what's to come. But it's difficult to add positions at a time when we're trying to tighten belts everywhere. The challenge that we face is the one that we discussed this when we met 2 weeks ago. The future for EMS services is in the air. And, unfortunately, we have an aging, staff of volunteers who are doing their best to fill the needs. But those two facts are evident. And so those factors, but also seeing the path we're heading down, a path where, in some shape, form or another, the town of Rockport will be asked to spend more, substantially more on firefighting and EMS, as we move. We have a great deal right now. Let me back up a second. Town of Rockport has its bottom line has been black and black and black on the cost of public safety. And it's largely been on the basis that we had volunteers giving their blood, sweat, and elbow grease to make this department run. We pay their time, but what we get in terms of value added, not just in terms of their time, but their expertise to bring to the table, allows us to not have to pay full-time firefighters. Many towns our size, across southern Maine in particular, have had full-time fire departments for years, decades. And we've been able to avoid that in this area, largely because we've had such an unbelievable crew of volunteers. We've had one chief, a paid chief for 50-something years. Yeah. But apart from that, we have volunteers. This would be the further change in that dynamic. And so part of the difficulties we've had as we've talked about this, having something that's more regional, is that the cost to get to a place where all of the big players in a regional service of firefighting and EMS service, the costs are so substantial to jump up to that place that it's almost like a non-starter. And so how do you get from 0 to a higher number? And that's a climb that in 1 year, I don't think our residents can afford, to go from 0 employees to 12 new full-time firefighters, EMTs. I don't think that's reasonable. So we'll talk a little bit as we get past this, but Chief drew up sort of what are some phased approaches that we can take to that. And that's sort of the recognition of how we got to those two firefighter EMT positions. We've got, let's see, the vehicle repair and maintenance line. We've had some substantial repairs in the last few years. We're budgeting 13,000, which is we're budgeting 12.5, which is less than what we spent this year already, but it is a historically consistent number. Again, everything costs more, but I'm trying to find places where hopefully we don't exceed that number. Recruits EMS supplies, again, in kind with the top bullet. If we are going to hire employees to provide services, and again, we're talking about first responder services, not transporting. Very different dynamic there. The forestry truck. This has been something that's been discussed by the department for well over a year. The engine 24 went out of service about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago. Frame was in bad shape. It needs to be put out to bid and sold to the highest bidder. And there is, as part of our truck replacement, we will be in the position to slot the next truck in that vehicle replacement schedule. And that forestry truck is one that the department and chief have been discussing, and I think they've circled around and working on presently. So that's also part of this. And then we have reserve revenues, and that's, well, it's just what we do to offset our costs. So, do you want to go to the next? That's got the.
So can I?
Yeah, go for it.
For at least the last 6 years, I've sat in front of the budget committee as well as the select board to explain that changes are coming, whether we like it or not, in the fire service as well as EMS. I mean, Randy said the same thing, that, you know, they're pillaging each other from department to department. This picture is just I didn't ask for this picture to be put up, but this is a structure fire in Lincolnville. Rockport had never been to Lincolnville for a fire. This is where all of us, not just this county, but every county in the country is facing right now. We went to South Thomaston, we've gone to St. George, we're going to Thomaston, we're going all over this county where we've never, I mean, before it was 4 towns that we went to and that was it. We're going further and farther than we've ever been. As you can see, well, I live in Lincolnville, so I have my Lincolnville gear on, but that's all Rockport guys and SCBA air packs, including both my assistant chiefs. Clay had, what, 5 more guys, 5 more people probably out by the road. So we had at least 10 people helping in Lincolnville for the structure fire. So this is where the fire services come, is we're going further and farther to help more, and vice versa. If we have something, Lincolnville's coming to our town now. They came to the fatal fire we had. Just real quick in reference to new people. In the last 5 years, we've had 5 new people join. 3 of those are high school students. Out of the 18 junior firefighters I've had on my department, there's 1 that's still on our department and lives in this town. So 17 have just disappeared. It's great for some have stayed in the service, some have benefited. There's departments that have them. The other 2 joined. They're not pump operators. They're not SCBA. They help with the basics. So in this 5 years, we've not gained a single pump operator or an SCBA guy. 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 5.5 now, 2 guys, Clay and Darren, that are pump operators. 7 years ago, Clint Beveridge and Dylan joined. That was the last time I got somebody that would go in a burning building. When I started, there were 17 of us, we're down to 12. And of those 12, myself, 48, John Wick's 49, Bill Lane's 50s. It's not an old person's game, but we're doing it because we have to. I mean, John Wick was our bull in the China closet guy that he could go through 6 bottles and do whatever he had to. He puts 1 on now and he's smoked. So we're not getting people. No one's joining. And it has nothing to do with the pay. It's just people don't want to dedicate the time, because the amount of hours that we have to put in on a yearly basis, especially to be interior, is huge. You gotta have a certain amount of training for all that. We do twice a month, we do training, which is the bare minimum that we can get away with, because people are so busy with work, family, and everything. Rockport is fortunate from the standpoint most all of our volunteers are in one way or another a business owner or self-employed. Clay can attest that West Rockport is great because they're all self-employed out there and we're covered. This side of town, we have 1 driver on this side of town now, and that's Alan Mitchell.
I keep telling my son he needs to join, but
The village, it's just, we don't have people over here, and I talked to Alan, he's fine with it. Alan Mitchell is 75 years old. Lives right here, but he works on the other side of town all day long. He's over there at 5:30 every morning. He lives at his camp in Lincolnville. So other than that, we do not have anybody to drive these trucks on this side of town. So it's getting worse and worse. So I just kind of wanted to go over those numbers. You know, we're fortunate some days that we do get the 16, 17 people, or even, I think that was 13 at that call that day. Friday, Clay and I were headed out of town. We had a flooded basement. 3 feet of water filling the entire furnace, everything, and 3 people showed up. It was a 3-hour call. We had to run generators and pumps. Main water ran the meter. 311,000 gallons ran through that guy's house. He's in California. He had somebody check on it. So when that cold freeze hit login weekend, the pipe burst on that Monday or Tuesday, they're guessing, and the water ran for 2.5 weeks until we got there. So 3.5 hours to pump the basement out. Then we had a rollover by Grassy Pond. Car completely rolled over into the water. 6 people. So when we go back to the 2 new firefighter EMTs, we are fortunate on some days, but we're getting to the point where there's a slide that'll come up that shows we used to average, what was it, 16? Anyway, well, you'll see the number, our numbers now, we're only averaging 16, we're down to 9. That's a huge change in just 3 years. So the importance of this is big. The aging, I can't talk about it to a certain point, but we have a very old portion of our department is old school. They don't drive, they still come, they do a lot for us, but they can't drive. They still, some of them pump, but we're hurting.
Where would these new people be based? I mean, I know we're going to build a new station.
Well, obviously they would, if
Yeah.
everything goes the way I hope, they would be over here.
Mhm.
Then they would transition. That's what this station's being designed for, is for someone, whether it's overnight, there's gonna be extra offices over there.
Mhm.
We have absolutely no space over here. I mean, Mark's been in there, he knows exactly what it looks like. My office is small. It's the old hall. I have one desk. I don't know, we could probably manage a second desk in there, but that's it. We don't have a meeting room. We have nothing over there. So that's what the new station it's set up for the future.
Also, the northern, whatever our current.
Northeast?
Yeah, what's the sort of future on that? Is the idea to eventually run our own, maybe in conjunction with Camden or?
The future of them is just undetermined. I would say my personal opinion is things are not good with them. Northeast used to be throughout the entire state. They're down to our town and one other town. They currently have 16 ambulances sitting dormant down in Scarborough. From what I've been told, the two owners are hemorrhaging money and they're getting to the point where they're gonna stop. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Mutual aid is being covered by Rockland a lot. Union's been going to Camden frequently because Northeast doesn't have the manpower in the rigs. So would I like to see them work? I think it'd be great. It'd be nice to have somebody here and manage it, but we have to be ready because they could pull out. I know we have a 90-day contract, but if they don't have employees, then they're not running a rig. So we have to at least start getting ready to maybe help and then work into potentially full-time. Ideally, yes, the idea should be Camden, Rockport, Lincolnville, Hope. Yeah. Right. But obviously there's a lot going on with Camden and Rockport right now, so that's not an agreement I think that anybody would want to go into right now.
Correct. As I understand it, when an ambulance is called to a location, unless they transport somebody to the hospital, there's no pay.
That is correct.
Is there any way the legislature can take care of that?
No. It's been a fight in the EMS world for many, many moons, unfortunately.
There is legislation that's being discussed right now. Maine EMS and some EMS providers, there's a Blue Ribbon Commission that looked over this past summer. There's a bill that the Speaker of the House is promoting and proposing that asks for $70 million for EMS services to keep them afloat. Because frankly, it's a lot of these nonprofits are hemorrhaging money as well. And we look all around us, there's so many small towns that run their own EMS service. We can say whether or not they are efficiently established, because it takes 2,000 calls to have one service run for a year with one ambulance. You need 2,000 calls. That's more calls than we get in the 4 towns, Camden, Rockport, Hope, Lincolnville.
2,000 billable calls.
2,000 billable calls, right. So we're at a point where, for us, even one rig is hard to justify. When you've got smaller communities, obviously, the Cushing, the Warren, even Warren, who's bigger than us, but not in terms of the 4 communities. There's even more of a difficult time. So there's $70 million the legislature's talking about. There's another $6 million that's part of that same package that would be, could be used for training first responder programs. And so effectively this is what we would be looking at as some sort of first responder program, without that transport.
Right.
We met for, I would say, a good 2 years. Chief Whitetalk, Chief Farley, myself, town manager Camden, city manager in Rockland about regionalization. The problem is Rockland has 18 full-time firefighters already on their payroll. We have 1. It's not, when you regionalize, it's equal shares based on size and XYZ. We would have to have 12 full-time firefighters here to be equal. So I know people said we need to regionalize. It's not just, I mean, yeah, we'd love to. I mean, I'd love to just have 2 trucks here and a ladder truck here and one in, you know, and then we could all work together on every single call. But to make it fair for each town, Rockport would by far be, we would take a hit unlike any other. I mean, it would be 12 firefighters because you have to staff your station. We could get rid of fire trucks, but that's not gonna cover, I can't imagine what 12 firefighters. I mean, I think we did the billing and the pricing because you have to have so many paramedics staffed. You have to have people that can cover per diem when people go on vacation. So that's, regionalization right now is just not, I mean, it's not even an option.
So you want to talk about just how,
There's Clay right there, just so you
There
can
he
see.
is.
Not only is he a firefighter, but he's a mechanic, you know, getting the bumper off the truck so we can, I didn't ask him to put that up there and I saw that and I laughed. Had his safety glasses on. So John had asked me to do some phasing, look at, again, speaking with Chief Wytalk, Richard, Chief Richards up in Belfast, who's now gone full-time up there. I spoke with the new chief down in outside of Freeport, who's doing the same thing. He used to be on Rockport Fire. The option that would best fit covering at least somebody in town 7 days a week during your prime time, 7 A to 7 P roughly, give or take, would be 2 full-time firefighters. Firefighter 1, 2 would be a requirement, and a basic EMT. So that would allow them to be interior firefighters as well as first respond to EMS calls in Rockport. Again, it would be based on certain types of codes, probably your Charlie Delta Echo call. So an Alpha call is Betty doesn't feel well. Bravo call is she got flu-like symptoms, headache, difficulty breathing. That might be Bravo, and then it goes from there, you know, cardiac arrest, so on. So they would respond to all those calls. Again, they would be in the station. Once you go to full-time, more than one, you're doing weekly checks versus what I have to do now is currently monthly. So everything we have from equipment, trucks, fire extinguishers, emergency, everything has to be checked on a weekly basis. Community education, safety, we do the smoke detector program still with the American Red Cross. They're going to be in town next month, canvassing all of West Rockport, offering up their assistance for free smoke detectors. We've worked with them on that. So that would be roughly phase 1.
So the question I was going to ask, you have 4 days on, 4 days off, 12-hour shifts, 48 hours. Is there an overtime component into that?
No, because, and I'm going based off of Camden has done that. That's what they're currently doing. So 1 week you're gonna have 48, but then as your schedule rotates in that pay schedule, 1 week you're only gonna have 32, I think it is. So it rotates around, so it equals out at the end of the year to basically 40 hours a week. Phase 2 would, okay, so that would be just first responding. So in other words, we would not own an ambulance. We would go on EMS calls and back up the current provider. Phase 2 would be actually hiring full-time firefighter EMTs to include paramedics. That would allow us to cover our town with an ambulance between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And then again, with only 5, we would have to contract another agency like Rockland that would cover calls in Rockport from 7P to 7A. Again,
who would do the billing for any type of insurance purposes?
When part of, so there's a whole list of paperwork that you get from EMS for first responder, transport, and so on and so forth. And part of that is you have to have a medical director and you have to have a billing person. So that's something that would be included in that.
Included in that $950?
Correct.
I guess that would be who would do it, I guess, is that, I mean.
There's agencies,
Is that another
there's
person?
companies,
yeah.
there's companies that do it.
And that's, there isn't revenues that are included with that, but obviously if you do provide that service, there's billings. So you would have some offsetting revenues, not to the tune of if you're transporting folks from Penn Bay to Maine Med. But this is really focusing on 911 calls. This is focusing on resident service, not on trying to run an ambulance service. And those are two very distinctly different issues. If we were to go and shoot for a higher level of service with multiple ambulances and a bigger staff, and probably in a regional solution, you probably would see something like that. Obviously, the revenues would be, enormous, but this is really trying to strip down really I think the bare minimum of what Rockport can say is a Rockport-based EMS solution. Beyond that, it's got to be something that's a bit more regional in nature.
You may
still hiring 5 full-time employees.
So right now, I don't know if anybody notices, there's a new red ambulance in town that says North Star on it. Penn Bay has now contracted an agreement with North Star Ambulance out of Franklin County. They cover 18 different communities up there, but they are owned by Maine Health. So they now have the contract for Penn Bay for transfers.
So they're taking it in-house?
Correct.
Yeah.
So any inter-transfers, so someone's at Penn Bay, if you're down there and Penn Bay's like, this person needs to go to X. North Star has an ambulance in town with staff now, 24 hours a day. They're currently in the process of looking for a place to store their rigs as well as keep staff. They want to bring, I think, 3 to 4 more rigs down here for transfers.
So that relieves the problem that I noticed in the paper where our local ambulance is not available because they're transporting somebody.
So my understanding is our provider still has a contract with Togus and other hospitals, and that rig is coming out of Rockport frequently. So.
But this North Star might eventually get that.
They are not here for 911 at this time.
No, I mean,
Oh.
for transport, you say they were for transport.
They have the contract for Maine Health Penn Bay. That's
Okay.
right.
But not.
Not
for
Northeast.
Togus or the-
Correct. Northeast does not have the contract.
Okay.
Well, Eric brought this up last time. There is a part of this that the hospital's role in this is important, right? Because they're the center of our community, right? The hospital's been here for, decades. And there's a conversation that should be had in terms of working with them. I talked with Dr. Foray over at the Penn Bay Medical Center in December. They're interested in working with us. They really are. But there are so many steps that they don't have a facility. We don't have a facility that could house them. There's many things have to happen to get to where we could really easily work together. And so it's sort of why phase 1 is where my brain went, because we don't know what the future holds, but we have an idea. It could be that either that overnight, or it could be that they step forward and say, okay, we can offer this as an EMS provider. But as long as, to me, this is me speaking, to me, as long as the town of Rockport has a contract with an EMS provider that is in any way transfer-based or has a profit motive, it does not make, Rockport needs to have its own alternative. It needs to have its own first responder program. Because that's really what happened, I think. If I could distill what the survey of the study said in 2020, Rockport needs to have its own level of high quality of service it can provide. And Camden and Hope and Lincolnville. And that's where that was sort of us dipping our toe into whatever this water becomes. Doesn't mean you have to go to phase 2 this year or next year, but being in phase 1 allows you to get to phase 2 a little bit easier, because when you see that $950,000 number at the bottom, I get a little nauseous. So, it's a big cost to get into this world. And that's that cost that I was talking about earlier. We would never see that number with the volunteers that Rockport's had for its fire department for as long as I've been alive here. That's a number we haven't had to think about. And we've been sort of banking that unofficially all these years. It's unfortunate that sort of the shortage of providers and the economy and all these things are forcing it to happen. But it probably was an inevitability for all of us, is that at some point this was gonna come knocking on our door. I mean, when we first went through this with Canada First Day, we knew it was possible then. We got another 10 years, at least another 10 years, which is good. And if we could get one more, two more, that's saving us even more money. Even if we're in phase one, we're still saving. We're not at that $1 million number.
Can we put phase one back up there? please?
Oh, sure.
One thing too, I don't know, for those that might remember Canada First Aid, for whatever reason, they stopped their business. They were very successful in the community from an EMS standpoint. And one of the biggest reasons for that was their first responder program. I believe they had anywhere from 15 to 20 people that were first responders. Lincolnville had at least 7. Whenever there was a call, Ann Mariner, Julie Libby at the time would grab their bag and run over to Frank's house because he had breathing difficulties and she could get things assessed. And, the first meeting.
Positions, or those are volunteers?
I think they got paid for a call out, like 25. It wasn't much, because I remember when I did it, it was like $25. It wasn't anything big. And I remember when Northeast started, I went to every single meeting with our board, with the heads of them, and I said, we need first responders. And they pushed it off and pushed it off, and they have a new medical director that we met with a month ago, 2 months ago, Mark?
Yeah, about a month ago. Yeah.
And he said, without a question, every town needs first responders, and you need to do it immediately. That's the only way EMS is going to survive. So here we are.
Is there any danger of the present force being demoralized by, the inevitability of this? Is there anything we can
Meaning
take extra care?
my volunteers that I currently have?
Yeah.
No, I think they'd be super appreciative, as long as they don't take Clay's truck, as long as they only use their truck. No, it's been discussed, no. Because like Chief Whitetalk said, they have a full-time 18-man department down there. They cannot put a fire out there without all of us, all the volunteers. You have to have volunteers to make the fire service work. They have 5 people on a shift. When that tone goes out, they know they're getting anywhere from 5 to 15 from Rockport, from Camden, from Thomaston. And like I said, if it wasn't for volunteers, and we've talked about it, I've talked with my people about it, they're 100% supportive. I've been talking about it for years. Like, be ready, we're gonna have people in this station, whether you like it or not. And people are like, no, that'd be great. They can have the truck sitting outside, so we pull up, the truck's already out there. We can get in, we can get dressed, and we can go. So they see it. Everybody's busy. We're busy doing life stuff, and it's hard. People have young kids, people have activities that take them to their camp way up in Solon every weekend in the summer. And, those are the guys that Monday through Friday, though, they're there during the day, but then nights and weekends they're gone. So
I think it's important too, as a town, that's the fire chief talking, but I think as the town manager or budget committee, select board, this isn't, from my perspective, and you guys can sort of say what you say, from my perspective, it's important to recognize this isn't a desired end, right? This isn't the desired approach. The desired approach is to support the group that we've had, and many of them who've been with us for decades. But it's a fact that something we're all facing. And we don't want to have a situation where, I can't go away because I gotta be around the station because no one else is in town this weekend. Stop living your life because there's a lot of birthdays and parties and Christmases and things that you don't have control over by signing up for that service. That's sort of like, I think they accept that part of the responsibility. But what I think we then have to do is say, we value that. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean, by having fewer and fewer of you who are able to respond, now we're putting more responsibility on you. If we just If we don't try to take some of that burden away, I think we'll lose more people,
Yeah.
not less. You know, I don't think I think it has to happen in concert. And we have to show enough respect for the crew that's been there and listen to them and hear them, because they are the ones who've been in the trenches all this time, you know? And I think they need to hear that from all of us, not just me, not just chief. They need to hear from the town. They need to hear, hey, you know, we value where you are. And I think people in the town of Rockport feel really very positive about our fire department. I think they have for decades. And I think we need to continue to have that be the case, but a big part of that's because we value the volunteers. I mean, I bet if we took a poll of the most popular, close your ears, Randy. If we take a poll of the most popular department, it's probably the fire department. You know, and people see it, and
Because
that's,
little kids like them because of the hats.
I know. I mean, you know, so I think we don't want to lose a good thing. But
Well, we have to change with
this call is one good example of why we have to, you know, why we have to try to do
This
something
was in
different.
the middle of the night, right across from Rockport Suites. Believe it or not, there was a driver pinned in there with her head and everything down by those rocks. The pole wires are teetering, as you can see, and it was on a weekend, we had 6 people show up. This is the most extensive extrication I've ever had to do. It was the most risky one because there was mud behind it. We had to find a way to get this lady out. I ended up having to call Rockland for additional manpower. We ended up getting her out underneath and out the other way. We had to lift, but this was an example of it was Bill, you, me, and then several of our much older guys that they can get equipment, but they don't cut, they don't do anything. So there's really 3 of us that could do the work. So when you say it can't happen, then we pull up to this and you still try to figure out how it even ended up this way. But phase 3 obviously is Northeast pulls out and we are stuck. We can't find contractors, you know, full time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. 12 full time is the minimum. And that's 1 paramedic on every 24-hour shift. And that's going to be for 911 only. It wouldn't be transfer unless we hired more people in, so that budget would go up even more. Because you'd have to have a rig available at all times.
And that, I mean, so that gets you into your billable stuff, right?
The phase 2 you could bill as well.
Where I'm going with that.
Much more
is
so here.
How many times you hear Northeast going to do a lift assist,
Right.
and they don't get paid for it, but yet we're paying for them to go there.
Well, and that's on Northeast too. I've brought that up 4 years ago that the nurse, thank God Rockport, we're very fortunate in that we have 0 facilities of any type for elderly. We don't have McGonagall House, the Highland Park, we don't have any. That's the reason Rockland is willing to help us because they don't have to do transfers. The problem is the nursing facilities, all the people that work there, their workman's comp won't allow them to pick them up because they're afraid they'll get hurt. So they call the ambulance service. The problem is the ambulance service could easily say, not a problem, we're gonna come, but it's gonna be a $250 charge every single time we come. It would end it right there and then guess who would start picking up. So there's ways around that. Thank God, if we went full time, we wouldn't be dealing with that because we don't have, I mean, and that's not to say, you know, Betty down the road falls out of bed, we would go help her. But
How did you arrive at 12 full-time?
based on 24-hour a day, 24-hour day shift, 3-minute shifts.
Covering multiple.
Yeah.
Sure.
And this, so to
And that's
that,
basic. That's bare minimum, 3 people, not 4 or 5 that can bring 2 trucks and ambulances and all that.
Sure, so it's more than just EMS, it's.
This is fire and this is the same as Rockwell.
Sure.
Exact same thing, but on a much smaller scale. They go to every single fire call, EMS call, you know, that's why you have to have a paramedic on shift.
but to that end too, that number is also the number 12. That would be what Rockport would be required to use if we were in a 3-community relationship with Rockland, Camden, and us. We would need to have 12 full-time firefighter paramedics working for us on that same schedule. So how we end up getting there, and if that service could expand to help a Lincolnville or a Hope, Owl's Head. You know, it would be the basis of sort of the tent pole of how that could work regionally. But that would be sort of Rockport's buy-in, would be that staffing level.
How does like St. George was like full-time EMS, but volunteer fire?
Right.
So their ambulance service for years has, don't ask how, well, you can ask her, it's been off donations. They have some substantial money down there. However, that's coming to an end. Thus, they just went in front of their board and asked for 73,000.
Yeah.
It was a big number.
Sure.
So that, I don't know who it was, or if it was a group of people, but whatever that funding was is, I would say, is either ended or is dropped.
I
So
thought
they
they were reallocating. They were asking for permission to take that money.
No, they've lost some money, so they're now having to go to the town for funding. But they're a very small town. They're not even close to us in population
Right, yeah.
or calls. They had a paramedic on staff or on call the entire 24 hours they said with an EMT there.
Gotcha.
And that's in St. George.
Right.
So they were spending a lot of money for very few calls.
I mean, they're based in the island community though, like the peninsulas are so, like, there's no way they could run. They could never run in the black, basically, without incredible amount of donations or taxing the ever-loving life out of their residents. So it's so, they're sort of stuck in that way. You know, it's unfortunate, you know, Cushing, St. George, Friendship, they're all sort of stuck in that, you know, because their populations are sort of spread out, it's long runs, there isn't any help that can come to the
Sure.
stuff, you know.
So how much money can we take from Randy to pay for this?
Take whatever you want.
We're gonna put radars on the ambulance and then.
Police departments used to carry in the fire department.
I knew this was gonna happen, we're on the same
We
night.
could always have the sheriff's department come up and cover and cap the whole thing.
There we go.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, and to that end though, I mean, there is talk about regionalization, you know, and there's a study that's going on. We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Same study that they did in 15 that
Right.
some of us are in favor of spending the money, some aren't, because we think we're gonna get the same exact answer as we got in 2015.
I think there's gonna be, again, it's an uncertain future. It would make sense if a lot of people could work together, and if we could just wipe the lines out and say, okay, well, this is these points, we hit all the services of where people are and sort of go from there. But realistically, we get, 17 towns in the county, 19 towns in the county. You know, Cushing doesn't want to give up its service. Cushing loves its service. Warren loves its service. You know, Thomaston has its service. Like, there is that sort of parochialism that, you know, well, we want to run it our way. I'm not even, from my perspective, the chief may have a different approach and Clay may have another one as well. I'm not as interested in that as much as we need to have a service that covers Rockport residents. And wherever it comes from, how it comes from, so be it. It's just that all the other options I've seen available to us all have big question marks. In some cases, they have even bigger dollar figures next to them too. So.
And we are working with, especially Camden, Lincolnville, Hope, Rockland, not necessarily on apparatus, meaning what does your town need? We'll buy it and we'll keep it, but equipment, gear, we're going to more gear, our helmets are going to the same. Our extrication tools, almost all of us are going to that. So we're starting to buy more similar stuff so that maybe this town doesn't need it and we have it. Same thing with the side-by-side, other departments were looking at it, we have it, now we're on call to help them out. If they get something, ladder trucks, they're covering us. So we're now, maybe not the big equipment, but we're all trying to now work together with, hey, does anybody have this? I'll get it. You need it, you call us. Rockland has a drone now. It's a $25,000 drone. It's got infrared FLIR camera system on it. It's an amazing camera. It covers the entire county now.
In that vein, then that is why we're putting in this budget, the forestry truck.
Well, it's not, it's in our 7-year replacement plan.
Right.
This is the next truck. It's a mini pumper, forestry truck / utility truck. So this truck will be used on, it won't be the first door out for structure fire, but any type of utility call, these storms that we have when we're out on 13 or 11 calls, we had, that truck will be the only one that goes out. We'll leave the big $700,000 trucks in there. This truck will go out. Plus it'll have first responder gear on it. So if we get an EMS call, they'll have their gear. They immediately respond in that vehicle versus an ambulance. So that would be a response vehicle.
Okay. Any other questions on this? All right. Easy, Megan. EMA.
No
All right.
questions? Thank you. All right,
Okay.
next.
Well, the only question I had, in your notes, you used the salary survey to determine the figure, but there's nothing in the salary survey, period, that I could find.
I forgot to go back and add the full-time firefighters to the comment, because we added that after I did the original comments. So that's my mistake.
Is there only just the EMA director, or is there an assistant?
Oh, you're on EMA, not fire?
Yes.
Oh, I'm doing.
I thought you were
Yeah,
talking about
so
fire.
there.
There's an EMA director and there's an assistant. So Jason is the EMA director for the town and Megan is the assistant director, or deputy, excuse me, deputy. So they sort of split the duties of that. And the reason for that Abby was previously the deputy. The reason why is when we look at these events, there's day of issues and there's day after issues. And right now, 365 day after issues. So the day of really letting Jason sort of run that show. And obviously there's many hands when you have these issues with these storms. We had the storm, was the bigger,
No,
with everybody else.
that's fine.
You got all that?
What's the split between the EMA and the assistant?
Most of it's his.
Yeah, I think,
Like
well,
over half of it is probably 70% his.
yeah, I'd say 2/3, 1/3 from looking at it here.
now I'll do my math.
Oh, is that, yeah.
2012.
Coming through the back
Yeah.
door.
Yeah. Right. The thing with this department is, it's sort of he's paid a stipend based upon the fact that they're in a position and they have to do certain things. But realistically, like in this event, we had the October storm of 2021. We bill based upon the time spent by town staff. So for example, even if Megan wasn't the deputy director, the time that she's spending on collecting all the data and everything is something we bill as part of that storm. So we should get reimbursement for it.
Well,
So that's another piece on top of it.
this is where I'm going with that, because I know Megan the other day said she doesn't like working 60 plus hours a week.
Right.
So this is just one of the 3 hats I think she can wear,
Mm-hmm.
with the Opera House being the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And then your 40-hour week here, but yet you're down in McCog. So we need to rein that in so that she doesn't have to get spread so far.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my other hat.
I gotcha.
I mean, I'd just soon have you here 40 hours a week, let McCog figure out their own problem.
Yeah.
But at least in that position, we're getting paid apples to apples.
We are.
And we won't
absolutely.
talk about the other one. but-
The other one.
Yeah.
The other thing that changed in the meantime of all of that is I used to have a 40-hour-a-week assistant, and then that position got reduced in my department to 50% mine, 50% assessing. So somebody had to pick up that extra work
And that's been that way for many years now.
too.
Just 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was a change Bill made before you left.
Who?
Bill.
Who?
As soon as he said it,
So
I knew what he was
anyway,
saying.
yes,
So about that play, this is.
right. Yeah. This is, it's about it. This is a pretty straightforward cut and dry one.
Started up as overtime.
It's not actually not dry, but it's cut.
It's funny, we had a fire call that morning, was it a flooded basement on Old County Road?
Yeah.
And Clay called me and said, did you know water's going over the top of Robinson Drive? And I was at the station, by the time I got there, that's when it was already collapsed. Just from him seeing it, going home and me getting there from the station, it had collapsed.
You can still see the pavement when you went by, you think?
It was too dark to tell it was pavement,
Yeah.
but there was black there.
I don't know.
And I literally went straight from the station there, and that's when I started taking the video and the pictures, it had collapsed.
What a day.
See, and here's another example of what we do.
Give it
This
back.
is Lieutenant Tolman here, doing his thing with the kids.
I'll try to bring it up. Hang on, almost there.
Is this what kids like?
Yeah, look at the lollipops and the colored helmets and clay. I mean,
We had gear out there for them to try on. They could go in the truck.
Nobody likes cops.
We had chainsaws they
you
could
guys
play
have
with,
handcuffs, not candy.
You guys, you had them.
run the extrication tools. Should've seen those smiles.
Hey, look, we have stuff we could let them use, but I think people would frown.
I wouldn't.
That catwalk thing might come in.
Exactly. Probably a lot more.
Round magazine. Oh, boy.
All right, what do we got here, John?
Not much here. We took out the engineering. Just, this is sort of the placeholder for the fact that the West Rockwell Fire Station, there's not really much of a budget conversation, but the bids are being, or the bid documents are being compiled right now. And I expect next week, we'll have bids out for the fire station. So the bids will be back about a month from there, so it will be like the 1st of April, we'll have those bids back. And at that point, not a lot of time,
Well, you know,
not a lot of time,
it's pretty tight.
yes. I think we have 4 contractors who are interested. There will be a pre-bid meeting, so we'll know which contractors are sort of in and interested and want to be part of this. Amanda Austin from 2A Architects, her counsel to us is they really need the 4 weeks to go through the bid documents and to put together the bid for us. So that won't provide us a lot of time to value engineer. Once we get the bids back, we're going to have to go from what we see and do all.
Well, the only reason I say that is, I mean, originally, back in the day, it was first talked about as being $1.8 million.
Yep.
And now you talk about 2.5 or 6. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna.
Yeah. We have some ways to hopefully bring that price down.
Right.
But we'll know more about that soon. But it's, this is gonna be, so we're still on course for a vote in June. And, it's going to be tight to get it on that ballot, but that's the goal right now. And again, as we'll probably go through more of that conversation of what that project entails, a lot of what we're talking about, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or current phase, all of them are supported by what is being proposed there. That's the key, is to not build a building that can only do what you need now. It needs to be able to do what you need tomorrow. And we don't know exactly what tomorrow looks like, but we know it certainly doesn't look like the building does today. So there'll be a decision to be made by the voters, and we'll get there, but there's not a lot here in this section of the budget. Did I miss anything, Jason? Anything else on that?
No. We're definitely being proactive with the building for the future. Not only that, but we're not putting the stuff but we're gonna have it set up for potential live stream if for any reason this isn't available. God forbid anything happens down there. You can have meetings there. So we're prepping it. It's all gonna be prepped with wiring. We're not gonna buy all the equipment, but it'll be there and available. So if we had to do something there, it'll be a shelter too for the fire department guys if something happens, generator, everything, so.
Okay, recreation.
Poor kids.
For kids.
John's taking
Um,
the kids.
So, there was a request in here to have paving for the first section of the road going into the Marge Jones, facility. I removed that from my budget, and it's not because it's not a good project, it is a good project. The dust control we have to do down there, the amount of maintenance every year to get the road up and, to standard at the same time that, you know, Little League's starting, and it's a tight sort of window. But I just couldn't do it in this. There is a capital campaign that is starting. Wednesday? Is that the jump off?
Now that we have an account set up, Wednesday, everything will be.
Why don't you talk about the capital campaign?
The committee, the rec committee's been an amazing group of people that have signed up to stay on. We are starting, hopefully Wednesday, adventure advertising will have everything done, but we are rolling out a capital campaign for fundraising. You don't have the phases for that, do you? Anyway, so our goal is $300,000. What that will do is, for those of you that have seen the pictures, the basketball courts and tennis courts are absolutely deplorable. 25 years, they've never had maintenance done to them. Basketball court has cracks of 6 inches and greater across the entire thing. Tennis court is the same way. If you look at the nets, they're all tilted in. What was the 30? No. I'm trying to remember, for each court, it was 15, 18, it was like $18,000 for main tennis and track to come in and redo, they actually have to dig the post out, unfortunately, and redo the tennis courts. It'll do that.
All told, it's 52,000.
All said and done, it's 52. We have that money in a reserve, but we need to replenish it. So thus the capital campaign. That would also start the paving in the main entrance where it's really bad. It gets seriously bad at that main entrance. So that would do the paving. It would also start looking at putting lighting in on some of the courts as well as the fields. We just put a security camera system in the concession building. It would buy an AED. There's a whole list of projects that we need to get done over there. For many, many, many years, almost nothing's been done over there. Unfortunately, we had to have the turf people. I can't think of it.
The sports field?
Sports field, thank you. Jeez. We had to have sports field come in. We ended up having to fertilize the fields because there was literally no grass left. It was all weeds and clover. So they came in this year and completely aerated and basically killed the field. It's the only way they can do it, is to kill the fields and then bring them back. We just did have a donor that donated $5,000 just for the Babe Ruth field to get the outfield fixed up. I had a contractor in there this fall, just 3 weeks ago, that went in and with his excavator while it was frozen, cleaned up in the backwoods area. We're gonna move or build a new playground in between the two fields, because right now the playground's out by the towards the main road, and it's right next to the road. So parents don't like their kids down there because they can't see them because the basketball court parking is in the way. So we're moving it so the parents can sit and watch Little League baseball or softball and have a new playground. So part of the fundraising is for that. We're looking at the Cedar Works commercial. Barrett Brown is owner and on our committee and is willing to work a deal out with us that's gonna be very nice, so we can get a commercial grade. This is what it looks like. You can see the courts right there, all bent, cracks. These are the phases right there. We would line, everything is gonna be rebuilt, those two courts, to include 4 pickleball courts on the tennis courts. Up until recently, I didn't know pickleball was, it's a very serious sport, and there is a ton of people that's all they want. So we're hoping with this capital campaign, part of this is to build 4 pickleball courts. Unfortunately, we may have to move the community garden. That would be where it would be located. That would also add additional parking. Pickleball courts are $150,000 just for the 4 courts. So that's part of this capital campaign. We're hoping it's a huge success. It is definitely for the kids and everybody else in the community. But it's all listed and laid out on what we're planning on doing. The committee's agreed on everything here and come up with some great ideas. As you can see, we've improved the baseball fields. Sports field came in and redug and relined every single field. They cut them. They put all new product down. Not Tom Fence. Yeah. Tom Fence. Wow. We used some money out of the capital campaign. They had never been in since the fences have been installed. Every gate was broken. The fences were bent. They came in and spent a week and redid every single fence on the property from all the playing surfaces. Somebody donated money. The flagpole, again, 25 years ago, was put way down by the tennis courts. So when they do the national anthem for baseball, everybody's looking around. So a brand new 30-foot flagpole was installed outside the Babe Ruth field. The Legion donates and installs or puts the flag up for us every year, and they keep that maintained. The irrigation system's been completely upgraded by Farley & Son. It's hopefully going to cut our water bill in half because it's now remote, meaning if it's a rainy day, Tom or the other gentleman can look at their phone and shut the irrigation system off now. If there's a spike, they put a preventer in there, so if one of the heads breaks, it doesn't flood the field, which happened 4 times last year. The softball field was completely flooded. So that's been completely fixed. 3 brand new sheds. Money was donated, so now all of the teams have big sheds where they can keep their equipment, and so on and so forth. Oh yeah, Adventure Advertising's been amazing. They donated every sign in there. I think there was 50 different signs they donated and put all brand new signs in for us, all the way out to the road. They are also donating the online, what do you call that? The donation.
Yeah.
It's an online company. Portal that collects and does all the money. It's pretty expensive to do that. It's a 1-year subscription, but Adventure is donating that to us for this capital campaign. And they did all the web designing and everything as a donation as well. It's all for the kids.
You know, of everything in this budget, this is the one that I think is way, way overdue of being done and fixed up. It's just neglected for years.
Robbie Ems has been in there with his excavator and his, what do you call that, Clay? You know that grinder thing on the bucket? I don't know what they call them.
Forestry mulcher.
It's like a forestry mulcher. It takes a tree. It's just a big blade, just grinds it down. So when you pull in, if you look to the left, it's all swamp and you can't see. He just went in and did 15 feet all the way in. And depending on where we are funds, he's gonna go in and clean, not cut the big trees, but all the just undergrowth stuff and cut all the way to Route 90 so that when people drive by, they can look and see that the place is absolutely packed. Because I get people all the time that said, oh, that place is never used. And I'm like, I go in there on a weekly basis and there's no less than 50 to 100 vehicles parked in there. So it's great. And I did talk with somebody that has a drone. We're gonna try to get some photos this year of the place full with all in use and stuff.
I have a drone also.
I'll be calling you. Yeah. You drive by in an afternoon, sunny, and it's full, grab some aerials. Just so people, I mean, that's why we want to open it up, so that when people drive by, that's not the sign. If you go by right now, Adventure put all brand new signage out there for us as well. Because some of the teams aren't the same. Some of the, like the 5-town Babe Ruth isn't quite the same. Soccer, the pitch, they've donated a lot of money towards this because they use it in the fall. So pitch has their sign up there as well now. So if you drive by and look, we cleaned the garden up a little bit and kind of took it away. I gotta see if any garden club wants to build a new box and plant something, but it definitely needs a lot of work still, substantial.
Well, like Mark said, so much of this is about just trying to keep what we have and make it good.
Yeah.
Right? And that's some of these things just, you know, for whatever reason, had fallen off, and we've taken this on and then some, so. So in terms of budget here, we removed the budget, we removed the paving, and then we're still putting in for the reserve. Because obviously that's how we're doing, that's how we're gonna do these improvements to those courts. Those basketball courts are gonna be immaculate after this.
We had to get the funding out of the reserve in order for Maine Tennis put us on the calendar. Unfortunately, September 31st is the end of their season and they're full up until then. If there's a cancellation, we'll get in there. However, because of the weather, he thinks he can still get in the first 2 weeks of October to get in and get it done.
So you have a PO with them, or you're giving them a deposit?
No, we had to make sure we had the funds before I could reserve. I didn't want to book.
Cool. Fair